Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news. Just days after Red Bull admitted they are seriously concerned about whether they can come back to the dominance they have previously had, Ferrari is similarly concerned about the way their season is going. Their car has fallen off quite dramatically since the start of the season, and Fred Vasseur is worried that sure, they have upgrades in the pipeline, but they're not necessarily going to come quickly enough to actually turn their season around. What will Lewis Hamilton think about this whole saga? What other engineers they might potentially need to bring into their team, because he's trying to win a championship in 2025, and it does not look especially likely with the way things are currently going. Very much on Twitter, your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. Plenty to get into today. Firstly, on Liam Lawson, or really just the V-carb situation in general, keeping Perez for whatever reason. They decided to keep Perez, probably more economical than anything else, as we've talked about over the last few days. That means that Ricciardo stays at RB for now. Tsunoda stays at RB, he's re-signed. So what does this mean for Liam Lawson, of course, who stepped in last year for Ricciardo, did a stellar job in that car, no doubt about it, and was effectively promised a seat in Formula 1 with this team, unless they decided not to give it to him, in which case he is free to go. Now, he may look elsewhere on the grid. The problem is, where else would he go? Because everyone else is locking in their drivers. There is still a potential opening over at Audi, right, alongside Hülkenberg. That's not yet confirmed. That has been talked about as an actual possibility for Lawson. But probably the most ideal scenario for Lawson is that things go as they might have done anyway, as in Perez is gone from Red Bull after maybe 4 more races, because that is the general theory. They're keeping Perez on a bit longer. But if those rumours were true, that Liberty Media, potentially at the behest of Carlos Slim, who has made investments into F1 TV and is like the chief sponsor and backer of Perez, apparently he reached out to Liberty, reached out to Red Bull, whatever, and effectively made sure that Perez would not lose his seat. So Horner then says, well, let's see how he goes over the next few rounds, where he's done well before, and after the next 4 races, so we've got Zandvoort, Monza, Singapore, Baku in some sort of order or another, then there's another pretty sizable kind of like second summer break, or autumn break, whatever you want to say. It's not like an official summer break or winter break where the teams can't work on their cars. It's just for some reason scheduled in the calendar to have a pretty big break at that point in the season. So knowing that's the case, there's the theory that Perez might be gone then, and therefore it would be probably Ricciardo who would step up into the main team, and then Perez would be gone, Lawson could go into V-carb, RB, whatever, and that would all be fine. The issue is as I say, if this Carlos Slim and Liberty Media thing is true, the rumour was they want Perez in the seat in Mexico, right? Which makes sense, but Mexico is after that like little break. So if that's true, then it seems likely that Perez will go to the end of the year, which means that Lawson's kind of without a drive. So that's unfortunate for him if it turns out to be true. Ricciardo is also saying, oh, look, it's not a junior team anymore, it's a sister team. They've gone back and forth on this over the years, haven't they? Whenever the team is doing well, it's a sister team. Whenever it's doing poorly, it's a junior team. Although I will say, it wasn't that long ago, a couple of weeks ago maybe, that Helmut Marko said, actually no, they are going to restructure RB into effectively a junior team again, because that's what the shareholders want. They want an opportunity for the likes of Hadjar, for the likes of Lindblad and other, Lawson for example, other talented drivers Red Bull have in their stable to actually make progress. So that's the issue for Ricciardo, is that yes, over the last few Grand Prix he has outperformed Tsunoda, and both of them have outperformed Perez in terms of average qualifying position, which is remarkable. But regardless, if they want that seat to be junior team project, then Ricciardo really needs this Red Bull promotion quickly, or it might not necessarily last forever. Yuki seems pretty happy where he is, but the question is, how long is that going to last for? Just because if they don't think he's Red Bull quality, which they don't seem to, then obviously something else is going to happen at some point. The general theory is that maybe it will be Aston Martin over the coming years, given the Honda connection they're going to have, that will have a look at him. Bit of drama as well at Williams, or really at Alpine. Apparently Williams have signed 26 people basically from Alpine. They've signed like 250 people lately, and Williams have announced a lot of signings from Alpine over the last several months really. Now, obviously, there's gardening leave involved, and exactly what that means. James Valt even says we are still slightly at odds. So, in a very British way, slightly at odds means that it's absolute all-out warfare here behind the scenes. But, with them, in terms of how many people we took from Alpine, if I'm truthful on this one. So, apparently they're like negotiating gardening leave. As we saw the other day, gardening leave doesn't necessarily mean anything. Well, it means something, but the rumour is that Loic Serra, who's joining Ferrari from Mercedes, Mercedes is actually already working on their package for the second half of the season, even though he's not working for them, but maybe he's jotting down some notes and sending them to someone, even though he's not working in Maranello, whatever. So maybe there's a bit of that going on, but definitely Williams strengthening their team in whatever way that looks like. Couple of quick things on McLaren, and also relevant to Mercedes, because it seems more likely than ever now maybe that Mercedes are going to put Kimi Antonelli in the car next year. Andrea Kimi Antonelli, very promising young driver who has basically dominated every series he's been in, not dominating Formula 2 right now, but has on the races where Prema haven't destroyed him. That's the team he races for. They haven't been good this season with the new changes to the Formula 2 cars. He's had his real moments, Antonelli, certainly in Silverstone. It was very impressive. And unless Verstappen decides to leave Red Bull to go to Merc, and, you know, the chances of that are relatively low, I would say certainly for next year. 2026, who knows? But 2025 seems very unlikely. Probably means Antonelli's getting the drive. Now, is that too risky from Mercedes? I think people are very split on this, whether it's like, look, sink or swim. If he is a Raikkonen-level talent, if he is a Verstappen-level talent, then sure, put him into the sport early with not much experience in these single-seaters, as was the case of Raikkonen, as was the case of Verstappen. And if he sinks, he sinks. And if he doesn't, then, you know, whatever. We didn't owe him anything anyway. He can go on to race in some other racing series, something like that. But of course, it's risky because you're expecting rookie mistakes from a guy in his first year, in the point where you're expecting a championship fight, right? Mercedes believe they can be in the hunt next season, but, you know, so it is a risk on some level, but also the feeling is maybe, okay, look, Piastri came in, and within a year and a half, he is maybe there or thereabouts with Lando, you could say. I think that's something, there's some work to be done, but in some respects, Piastri is right there with Norris right now, and it's taken him a year and a bit to kind of get to that point in some respects. Norris, on the other hand, though, still is the faster driver in terms of race pace, tyre management. I mean, look, we saw it in Hungary, the pace he had at the end of the race when he was in front, but you know, there was other drama, of course, of that Grand Prix. One of the unfortunate stats, though, for Lando is actually this stat here, which is positions gained or lost on lap 1. Now, if you're starting off on pole or right at the front, difficult to gain too many positions, but Hamilton leads the way here with 9 positions gained on the first laps of the season. Piastri at 6, Verstappen at 5. Leclerc actually would be in the positive quite substantially, but he had a horrendous lap 1 in Austria where he got damaged and his race was just cooked. So without that, Leclerc would actually look rather better. Perez, though, has gone backwards despite the fact that often he's not starting very high up the grid. Sainz at -6, but Norris lost 26 positions this season. This is actually how it looks here. So Piastri, Hamilton, etc., when he's gained or lost positions on the opening laps. Norris is one that is pretty ugly, really. Like, of course, there was the sprint race in Miami where, you know, that didn't go to plan. He drops to the back of the field, so that was -11 technically. But, you know, he's not gained a place any lap 1. I mean, this was the Chinese Grand Prix sprint, of course, the first corner incident there with Hamilton. Spain, he lost 2 places. And then the last 3 Grand Prix in a row, he's lost places on the first lap, whereas Verstappen has generally done the opposite. Verstappen hasn't even lost a place this season on the first lap as well, which is pretty impressive. And actually, the same is true for Oscar Piastri as well. So pretty commendable from those guys. But yeah, not a stat that Lando will be especially happy to see. But one thing McLaren do have going for them, and Lando does have going for him, is the fastest car right now on average over the last few rounds. It does seem like they've had the strongest package. The Red Bull has arguably been, you know, 3rd, 2nd, tough to say. It's very competitive at the front of the field over the last few rounds. Hopefully that maintains the case going forwards, because Pierre Wache says the car, the RB20, didn't deliver what we expected in every area, going on to say that they made the changes they did to try and take an extra step forward with the RB20, but the problem was they pushed the boundary a little bit high, and in some areas maybe too much, and that has created some characteristics that are not designed for the drivers. The success is coming not by yourself, it's also coming from the relative performance of the others, and you know, we were fortunate last year the others didn't do a good enough of a job. This year we expected a fight, and you know, we've got it. He says, look, the RB20 is a better car than the RB19, but it's not good enough with respect to the competition, right? So lots to say on that, but the reality is, as we saw yesterday, Horner is basically saying, yeah, we're going to be in a dogfight for the next couple of seasons. But who's going to come out on top in that dogfight, right? Because Mercedes are going to be very confident right now. It was interesting, I thought that Toto Wolff wasn't as confident as he could have been when he talked about this in the media, saying, look, we were the fastest at Spa. Who could have guessed that a month ago? Saying, Max, you're hearing this type thing. But he also said, got to keep our feet on the ground and accept the fact that, sure, we've won 3 of the last 4 races, haven't always been the fastest car, however, and therefore there is still work to be done in this trajectory. And sure, over the last few rounds, rounds, Mercedes have been on the uptick, other teams have been on the downtick. Doesn't necessarily mean that's how it's going to go for the second half of the season, but there is a general feeling that Mercedes should be there or thereabouts, and they also have their new floor returning at Zandvoort. So tough to say exactly how many more upgrades Mercedes have in the pipeline, but they've brought a lot over the last few rounds. Of course, they brought a Hungary, they have the Silverstone package, of course, and then they bring in further upgrades. They did to Spa, but because the day one practice, bit of a disaster, they changed their mind on that. They removed the floor, and now they're going to put it back on here in Zandvoort. So again, another potential positive step there for Mercedes. Of course, Hamilton is going to be thinking, hang on a second, the car is now good again, and I'm starting to win races again. You know, what about Ferrari next year? Are they going to be in a good position? Because it was only a couple of months ago where it seemed like Hamilton had played a blinder, right? Ferrari were looking good. They were fighting with the Red Bulls at the front of the field at times. As soon as at least the Red Bull dropped off a bit, it seemed to be, yeah, Ferrari are clearly the closest contenders to Red Bull right now. When Red Bull failed, such as, let's say, Verstappen did in Australia, well, his brake caught on fire. We talked about some of that drama the other day with a few things on the brake bias, trickery or whatever. The may or may not have been going on, but it seemed like Ferrari were the team to beat at that point. But their Barcelona upgrade, their Imola upgrade did not work as intended, really, and they found themselves falling back down the order somewhat, with Mercedes and certainly McLaren making serious headway. Leclerc was still good enough to get third place after Russell's DSQ at the Spa Grand Prix, but really since Monaco, they've been practically nowhere in terms of performance, really in a bit of a no man's land, really, behind some of the front runners. And that is the concern for Hamilton and for Ferrari, is that, okay, what's next year going to look like? They obviously made some design choices with this year's car that initially looked to be relatively, you know, they weren't as aggressive as they could have been, and it seemed to be working early doors, but maybe the ceiling of this current concept is not where it needs to be, and McLaren and Mercedes and probably Red Bull right now might feel more confident than Ferrari will going forwards, because, you know, Vasseur says these teams, including ourselves, are basically on the edge of what we can do in terms of development right now, going on to say that, yes, we are bringing new parts as soon as possible, but we are right at the limit of what we can actually do, not just in terms of the speed of production, but also in terms of the amount of money I think they have on the table as well. This is a key point to keep in mind, that you do have these teams on a budget cap nowadays and a limit in terms of aerodynamic testing time as well. It's not like they have infinite money. To be fair, Mercedes have felt like they've had infinite money this season because they've brought upgrades every single round, but Vasseur is saying, yeah, we're not the fastest right now, and we do have a lot of work to do, and, you know, there's not so much we can do about it because we can't bring so many new parts to the car. The upgrades they brought before didn't really work just because they added downforce, but they brought porpoising effectively back into play. The new upgrades are meant to resolve that so they can maintain the downforce basically, especially in the slow speed corners, but they will also not bounce around in the high speed corners, which just destroys their lap time and also kind of destroys the car as well. Certainly destroys the floor plank that doesn't especially like bounce around at the high speeds, neither do the drivers' spines as well. So this is the concern for Hamilton, really, is that have Ferrari somewhat lost their way? I think it will be a very telling moment whether the upgrades that Ferrari bring over the next couple of rounds, I think really it's more like Singapore, Austin, stuff like that. We're expecting probably something else from Ferrari, and when they do bring those upgrades, that will be a key moment to see. Because if they don't fix their problems then, how much faith can we realistically have that they're going to do so for 2025? We know that Loic Serra has joined Ferrari and will continue to work with Ferrari, it seems, behind the scenes over the next couple of months in order to maintain their new packages. And yeah, the rumour is that Serra, former Mercedes guy, is already working on that upgrade package for the second half of the season. But it's going to be a massively crucial one, because if Hamilton sees Ferrari fail again with the mid-season upgrades, he's going to be like, wow, I've got a real job on my hands here. And also, you know, Ferrari's title challenge in 2025 might already be over if they can't turn it around basically now. The Newey question is still there in the wings, right? We've talked about Mike Elliott. Of course, Loic Serra is joining from Mercedes, and even Eddie Jordan, who kind of manages Newey, says that, well, maybe he's going to go to Ferrari. There were rumours, though, that Ferrari don't even want him anymore. They don't want to pay the money, and some of the drama associated with that would be involved in getting Newey onto the team, and don't want to have him completely, you know, revitalise and restructure and rejuvenate and basically change dramatically the technical structure of the team. Ferrari are like, no, you know, we don't want to change too much. But maybe that's kind of the point, right, of bringing in Newey, is to actually change the structure, which has not led to championship success over the last several seasons. 2008 was the last time they won a constructors, 2007 the drivers. So maybe things do need changing. The rumour is that we're not going to hear anything on Newey until effectively September, because there's something in his contract with Red Bull that means they can't say too much yet. At least that's what was talked about over the last couple of months or so. McLaren do have upgrades in the pipeline though. They are probably going to end the year as the fastest car. It's just, I think, from Ferrari and also for Hamilton to think, okay, let's maximise Hamilton, what he can do at Mercedes this year. Next year at Ferrari, you know, he's hoping to be in a championship fight immediately. That would be a great scenario for Ferrari and for Hamilton, and of course for Charles Leclerc. But depending what happens over the next couple of months, it may be that their focus really has to switch to 2026 and try to nail those regulations if they want to get another championship on the board. Just one final thing to talk about here I thought was kind of interesting. Perez was talking about the media scrutiny being worse for Red Bull drivers than others. I don't know, do you guys agree? Do you guys disagree? I think the media scrutiny is worse for drivers that are underperforming, to be perfectly honest. And these are the average good positions of the season. And it doesn't make a especially pretty reading for Sergio Perez or for some others here on the grid so far this season. And actually, Perez was kind of ranked here in the mid-season driver rankings, not far above Logan Sargent. I think Sargent's improved this year, to be fair to him. But he's still not been good enough as far as I'm concerned. And it's understandable that he's getting kicked out. He has actually, in sprint quali, done quite well against Albon, but there's only been 3 of those. In regular qualifying, Albon has always beaten him again, as he has done for the last season or so. He's probably improved more Sargent than Zhou has, to be fair, but it's probably not going to be enough. But Perez, in their rankings, gets number 19. So I think Behrman, who technically drove, was like unranked, because there was one race. What are you really going to say about that? But Perez is, yeah, considered to be right down here again, and he was right down here at the end of last year in terms of the driver rankings people were putting together. And you know, I can't say this is massively unjustified as it stands, but very much interested your thoughts on all of this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.